Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in. Welcome to KNOLSKAPE's BFSI Learning Week. And today we are having the pleasure to welcome 5 of the very, very eminent panelists here to discuss our topic for today, which is managing a multi-generational workforce in BFSI. I am Anup Walson, Director Growth at KNOLSKAPE, and who will be your moderator for today. To set a little bit of context in terms of what the topic is all about, managing a company's employees can be really complex, especially when you are dealing with several different generations in one workplace. From the silent generation all the way to the Gen Zers, each generation brings its own perspectives, work styles, and communication preferences. Generational differences can affect everything from how people handle feedback to how they approach the work-life balance. So today, our discussion is about what drives this workforce to thrive in the workplace while navigating through daily encumbrances and still emerge successful, thereby generating value at their workplace. And I'll take the privilege to actually introduce our panel for today. First up, we have Ms. Anupama Lal, Head of Learning and Culture at KPMG ASPAC. Anupama holds about 2 decades of experience heading large organizations in the space of organizational development, HR transformation, and learning strategy. Anupama is also a certified coach who helps individuals and teams elevate their strengths in their domain. Welcome, Anupama.
Thank you so much, Anup, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be a part of this discussion.
Next, we have Shampa Roy. Shampa heads Bajaj Allianz Learning and Development. Shampa comes with over 2 decades of L&D, coaching, training experiences across sectors. Shampa is also a life coach and an NLP practitioner who uses her skills to transform individuals and organizations. Welcome, Shampa Roy.
Thank you so much, and really looking forward to the introduction.
Next up, we have Kris. Mr. Kris Gomes is the Chief Learning Officer at Avendus. Kris comes with, again, over 2 decades of experience spanning L&D, OD, culture, personal development, and HR. To say the least, Kris believes that talent management journey are anchored to mindset shifts over anything else. Welcome, Kris.
Thank you so much, Anup. I'm very happy to be here and happy to meet everyone on this panel.
Next up, we have Sweata Gupta. Ms. Sweata Gupta is currently the AVP and Head OD and Inclusion at Aegeas Federal Life Insurance, the member of the World HR Board, an alumni under 40 Jombe, a certified life and NLP coach, and a leadership facilitator. Sweata comes with about 2 decades of domain experience who brings with her the knowledge of learning to overall alignment to business strategies within organizations. Welcome, Sweata.
Thank you so much for a warm welcome. Looking forward to an engaging discussion forward.
Yeah. Finally, we have Ajita Ahuja. Comes with, again, 2 decades of experience in the BFSI space, currently heading learning for branch banking at Axis Bank. Ajita spearheads a range of L&D programs across multi-generational workforce. Ajita has also led high-performing teams with 2 of the country's leading insurers, which is ICICI Prudential and HDFC Life. Welcome, Ajita.
Thank you, everybody. Looking forward to getting a lot of insights on the topic.
Yes. So again, a warm welcome to all the panelists and the people who have joined this particular session. We look forward to engaging you across the next 60 minutes. So Ajita, to actually break this and get into what we are all here for, I think the first question is directly to you. I want to talk to you about Is this generational divide overblown, or is it an actual genuine challenge that leaders have to work with strategically?
It's not overblown. I think, it's just been 5 years that I came back to an absolutely changed corporate world in India. I was away for good 15 years, so a lot changed. And then I had never worked with an organization of this size, this quantum, which absolutely blew my mind. We are 100,000 plus employees within the bank. And then the sales force that we are looking at is 50,000 plus employees who are directly customer facing. And there have been people who've been with the bank for 20 years and plus. And sometimes some of them have been stuck. They haven't really grown in the organization. So there are complex situations where we have to deal with this generational gap and a lot of stuff which we all probably today be talking about, the fixed mindset and preconceived notion and prejudices that we carry for the younger generation and vice versa. So I don't think it's overblown in my experience.
Yes. Thank you, Ajita, for that. I think that double confirms that we are in a good topic for today, and we are in the right track. So I think that leads to my next question, Anupama. While Ajita has reconfirmed that this is a certain problem for leaders in today's organizations, do you see, while you have been working across the globe, do you ever see that this generational divide is like more of a us versus them, like the silent versus the Gen Zs kind of a thing? Or is it like, and if that is the case, how do you actually mitigate this and actually bring in a solution to this, Anupama?
Yeah. No, I think it's certainly there, Anup, and I experience that us and them narrative does come in quite a lot. I hear leaders say, I don't get this generation. They don't want to work hard. I think the one I find very interesting is the strawberry generation. Have you all heard of that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, and I'm like, do they bruise easily? Do they have mental health issues very easily and all of that? So it's certainly very real. And I think all organizations are trying to work at it from a learning angle, from a well-being angle, from just looking at time in a different way so that we don't overtax the way we look at time. So I think there's a lot happening for sure. And I think the two I would call out is certainly on the well-being side and on how we educating, creating awareness and learning around these topics so that people feel a little more comfortable and a little more adapt and agile towards dealing with it.
I think great point there, Anupama. And I think, Sweata, what do you feel? I think, what is your perspective on this?
Us versus them is largely driven by the culture of the organization, which is in the hands of the leaders. So definitely it's amongst the leaders that how they build a culture where there is high inclusion, there is respect for diversity. Every generation is handled in the way in which they approach work, which makes it more inclusive for different generations to work together, and the diverse population bringing in the potential and performance which the organization is working towards. So it is but said by the McKinsey reading of 2018 that racially diverse teams outperform non-diverse teams by 33%. And if you look at another data, companies with more diverse management teams have 19% higher revenues due to innovation. So it is but very clear that more the diverse a team, higher is an inclusive and performing spirit among people. And how does the leadership then build in a sense of belongingness amongst people and a performing culture? That's my view.
Absolutely. I think great thought there, Shweta. And in fact, while we have also been working with multiple global organizations across the geography, what we have also seen in the last 2-3 years, or in fact, pre-COVID as well, is that the entire definition of a worker, and a workplace is drastically changed.
Yes.
And thanks to, obviously, there is a lot of technological aspects that's coming in and supporting this, but also a lot of in terms of mindset, in terms of expectations from Gen Zs, or expectations in terms of what they feel at work. What is that culture of belongingness, like you spoke about, right? How is leadership able to bring that culture of belongingness, etc.? Great there. So I think this is where it gets getting interesting, and I really, while all of you have spent so many years in specifically helping organizations develop, say it could be the OD factor, it could be the L&D factor of it, the HR side of it, etc. So my next question is to Kris. Kris, what do you think when you look at, when we talk about technology today, we talk about there's no discussions that is without AI that comes in, right? So how does, so when we talk about technology and its contrasting approaches with different generations, how do you think these generations, say it could be the Gen Zs or the silent generation, how is their approach to technology? How are they imbibing technology? How is that helping your entire vision in HR and L&D, Kris?
Anup, I think this, technology has been on for ages, right?
Yeah.
It's just now termed as AI.
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago, it was termed as something else, right? Before that, it was termed, oh, the laptops come up, right? So I think the first thing with this technology, you can't run away from it, right? It helps you, it helps you develop, it helps you reach a far more amount of people, right, when using technology. So, and everyone understands that technology is here to stay. I think what the difference is, people get a bit insecure with technology. Today, everyone talks of AI. It's the buzzword. You talk about anything is, how is AI going to help me? And then you ask people, what is AI? And everyone says, good question, right? And everyone says, it's going to take my job. I think today's world, technology is a given. It's just about intriguing people to say, if you use this much, this is what's going to happen, and take it slow. The second big piece is just say that AI and tech is not taking away your jobs, right? But if you don't understand technology, the people who do will take away your jobs. Today, that's the biggest challenge. What we need to tell our audience today, or even the employees which I work with, that's the difference. You can't run away from it. We'll help you. You need to learn, because there's no doing away from it. But getting insecure about it is not going to help.
Yeah.
That's the big mind shift where it's going to happen, that AI is not going to take away your jobs, but people who understand AI will do. So we'll help you develop. And then it's starting a conversation with people as to what do you want to know and what can we help you with. You get those conversations going, you probably ease the workforce, and you probably solve more than, or you cause much more ease to the system than more angst, right? That's my take on technology. It's going to happen. Trust me, 10 years from today, something else will come up. And, now AI has moved to Gen AI. I don't know what's going to happen next, but that's my take on the whole technology piece.
Actually, I think well-rounded here, Kris, because this sometimes reminds me of the computer age, right? Like everybody had that fear that came in, is computers going to take jobs away? And now none of us can live without a computer, right? So I think that, but Sweata, to you, what do you feel here? Anything that you would like to add on, Sweata?
This one piece where I've seen very closely that while we are in the era of organization transforming, and transformation is the bigger giant that is getting addressed. At the same time, when we are addressing automation with speed, it's also important to bring in a balance of intuition. And then among the baby bloomers, how do we communicate to them the importance of technology and how the technology will support them and aid them and enable them? That's very important. While with the Gen Zs or even with the millennials, it's an easy go approach. And they kind of built to do it. However, what about the generations? How do we build in acceptance among them by making them realize that it's just an enabler and not something that's going to snatch away what they are entitled for?
Yeah, sure. I think good point, and that takes me to the next question. All right. So the question is, while you spoke about communications with us, right? So Shampa, this is directed towards you. Um, do you see communication styles are a big driver to influence the multi-gen workforce? And if you think so, and what are because every generation has a specific, say, preference in terms of communication, right? So do you see that in your organization, and what do you think about that? Yeah.
Thank you, Anup. Very contextual question. I'd start by just giving it a context of what I have seen and experienced.
Yeah.
See, all of us live in this very exciting era where diversity in the workplace is at its peak, right? We speak a lot about gender diversity, we talk about cultural, racial, and whatnot. Whereas the age and the generational diversity probably takes a little bit of a backstage. It is not spoken about, it is not pointed out, things are not being done about it. But as all of my other peers here have said, it is a real challenge, it needs to be spoken about. Now, talking about communication, when you have different sets of people, and I don't need to talk about a workplace full of very highly attuned, intellectually capable people, even in your own house, when you have different age group or different generation, you see that you have to adapt and say and communicate not just with your words, but even with your attitude to make them understand, appreciate, you need to humanize everybody's experiences, and that channel of communication needs to be intentionally created. And I love the word that Sweata used. Intuition has to be a part of this, because if you have to evolve, you can't make it just a part of a algorithm. It has to evolve even with something that you have not been able to decode yet, right? Saying that, I think the entire communication is very important for the newer generations, and I don't believe in labeling too much, so I will defer and deter away from using too many of those names. But the newer generations, I think they like quick, very, very transparent, authentic communication. They want to see you vulnerable. And probably the generations which have experienced some different things, older ones, are more, they are more comfortable with the structure. They are more comfortable with probably slightly emotional kind of conversation and communication. And I think all of it rounds up to what sort of trust. I think for communication to work, the trust piece is very, very important. And there, I think I'm going to bring in the 2020 study by the Edelman Trust Barometer, where they say that trust works differently in these. And I think that if you just go through that study, it is going to tell us what communication we should use. What are they seeking? So, for example, the boomers are seeking, and I'm here because the study is named and labeled them. That's why I'm using it. Boomers need transparency. You have to give them more transparency. The Gen X will value more competence. The millennials value alignment with their values. And the Gen Zs will demand authenticity. So if we can keep these sort of very basics in mind, and also I want to throw in a little complexity here, Anup, and I think maybe it will come up with your questions. A lot of times I may be born in a different generation per se, but my mindset could be of a different generation. So when we focus too much on just my birth date and not the persona, then we might be making it a little difficult for us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think great point, great perspective there. And I think I will also stop labeling generations here. But Ajita, to you, Ajita, while you're managing this entire huge, big workforce of yours, how are you finding it in terms of communication very specifically? Do you have different models of communication to different, let's say, sets of people or generations that you're addressing? Or do you have a completely different plan there, Ajita?
I haven't been able to crack the code as yet. And one of the big problems that the entire organization is struggling with is getting their bandwidth. But the nature of the industry is such that everybody, the branch who's in a customer-facing role, is receiving multiple communication. Not only they are receiving communications from the customer over email, over phone calls, WhatsApp. Today, now we also have WhatsApp banking, then the customers have direct phone numbers. Then there are internal apps which are made for assistance to the customers. So the customers are dropping messages there. But internally, every department is trying to reach to the branch banking because that is where the buck stops, So from L&D to the product, any new launch, everybody wants to get their attention. There is no one method that we've been able to handpick and say that, okay, this one works, So depending on what is it that we are trying to communicate, how critical it is, how soon do I want people to take note of what I'm trying to say, we pick and choose which method are we going to go for, and are we going to go for more than one method, because a lot of times we see that tomorrow there's a campaign which is going to launch, let's say. Tomorrow we want the entire branch banking to do a campaign on pensions. So if people do not read this, the entire campaign is going to fall flat. Or typically from L&D, the struggle that we have is that we've got mandatory modules which we want people to complete. When they complete the mandatory module, they become eligible for an assessment. When they become eligible for an assessment, when they complete the assessment, they become eligible for their appraisal. Now, this has a direct impact on their career. Yet, people don't open the email, right? What we're trying to do is now come up with multiple options. So we rely heavily on WhatsApp because we realize that a certain cohort or another certain age band is constantly glued to their phone. This is the quickest way to get their attention. Okay. Somebody also mentioned, I think Shampa was talking about some tonality, etc. So what tone do I use? So right now, in this particular month, I'm trying to drive a training program completion among 50,000 people between 1st May to 31st May. Now, it is something very simple that if you don't complete, your attendance is going to be blocked. And ideally, if somebody came from my age group, it's enough for me. One communication where I read that my attendance will be blocked, I will lose out on some salary, it's more than enough. I will complete it, right? So honestly, I'm clueless that why people don't take a note of it. Why is it not registering? So now I'm coming up every day, I send a EDM which resonates with them. So I pick up stuff like Netflix. I pick up logos which they relate to. Netflix, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, stuff like this, which is closer to their hearts, How I test whether it's going to fly off or no, I've got a 12-year at home, I've got a 21-year at home. I actually show those idioms to them, and if it catches their attention, my younger one actually, when he's exam, says, oh, what is that? Netflix? Okay, then he reads it. So I say, okay, this is going to fly. This will fly, very casual language, very, very less content, because I have heard this at home. I've got a Gen Alpha, I think the other one is also Gen Alpha. So they sometimes come and give me a very, very brutal feedback. Oh my God, this module is so boring. How do you expect people to do this, So I realized that, okay, this is not going to work. So I think the good communication or good content is not what I think or what I believe to be good. It is, I genuinely feel pity for this generation because at least in the bank, they are overboard. We have, I think, people who joined the bank 20 years back had a lot of luxury. I think the product suite was not that big. The communications were not so many. I think they are constantly bombarded with communication. And it is very normal that they miss out on some communication, some training. Every day we expect them to finish the banking work and then sit down for one boring training. It's not even very interesting. I mean, studying about current account at 6:30, I don't think anybody is interested in that. So there are multiple ways, and I don't think that we've been able to, get that one thing which works. But we are constantly thinking, okay, what is that medium? What is that app which they will definitely open at least once in a day? So the first thing when they open, some communication should be fed to them.
Yeah.
We are still figuring out.
I think great. I think the way that you actually brought this up, Ajita, I think a lot of innovative ways that you're certainly trying. And I think once you're successful, please do let us know what actually works. It actually is that like a trial and error. And it's not about trial and error, it's more of learning while the times are changing, what worked 2 years, 3 years, 4 years back does not work now, right? And it's changing really, really fast.
So I'd like to add here, Anu,
Please,
I
please.
think just to, because you had asked that question, I think 3, 4 things as nuggets apart from the philosophy. I think face-to-face structured communication works with every generation, depending
Hmm.
on what sort of the need for the communication is.
Hmm.
Then bite-sized learning, digital learning with nudges, peer learning. So we have seen the moment we introduced peer learning in our digital learning journeys, that pushed the learning and the communication, the channels to free up a little more, and people were more interested. So that was the other piece I think that has worked very, very well with us. And of course, feedback, how people use feedback in communication also becomes important. Feedback loops. So younger the generation, faster the feedback they expect and they want to. And for a older generation, structured method, block their time, sit separately, discuss, and give that respect before starting the communication. So that has worked well for us. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you.
I have a
Shampa.
question for Shampa. Shampa, you talking about peer learning, and I absolutely agree with that. But one of the struggle, at least in a large, set of organizations, how do you offer a whistle? Like, what's in it for me? So if I'm going to ask a relationship manager that, okay, you train the younger DRO, customer servicing officer, on something, which we've tried, but it drained us of the energy because so we've got about 3,000 relationship manager and we've got about 15,000 customer service officer. Because they were like, we gave them the feeling that you are the older sibling and you're going to take the younger sibling into your fold. But it's not easy because
It's
not necessarily because I don't want to do, but because I've got so much of my own stuff to do. So how do you motivate me to?
It's a very valid point, and it is not easy. Just because we are doing things, it is not easy. We also have a an employee base of 27,000 plus, and we are, the concept of that one size does not fit all is something we are really driving home. In fact, we have separate curated programs for each business unit, which is separate. And now what we have seen is only when their leaders, the skip levels, the seniors, if they don't walk the talk, no matter how many initiatives from learning, from OD, from talent we take, they don't really have that sort of an impact. So now what we are trying to do, Ajit, I mean, I don't know how, implementable it is in your kind of scenario, but what we have done is that we have created the entire train the trainer where the leader is holding that message, whatever you're either giving it through a learning journey or you're doing a classroom session, whatever, you're the holder of that message, and that needs to drill down to your entire hierarchy. And then we are mapping it. And we do see a tiny bit of a little movement there, but probably we'll have to catch up after another 365 days to tell you whether we did see some significant impact.
It's similar. We call it Gurukul actually. We do like 5-week program. Yeah.
No, actually, I think great points. And I think two things that I think I can summarize this, Shampa and Ajita, is that there is no one thing, right? There's no one area that you can feel that, okay, I'm safe here and this is my one way of communication or mode of communication. And also, very interestingly, every generation needs a different one. The preferences are a little different. And I think it becomes a huge, say, like it's a very, very tedious aspect that we need to bring in, identify which really works for us, and then do that. That is one real big takeaway in terms of communication that is there. And then obviously, while we are all moving towards technology, etc., so I think one way that we need to see is how we can actually make it while transparency, contextualization, personalization, humanization aspects are covered, but also how are we able to leverage technology as well. And I think these are my two takeaways. Kris, your aspect here, any perspective that you have to add?
On communication, correct?
Yes.
So I work for a smaller organization, and nothing in compared to the number of what Ajita and Shampa work. And we're about 600,
Yeah.
650 odd people, right?
Yeah.
I think the way I look at it, and this is a very personal opinion, is every organization has some levers which you need to understand and pull to deliver a message,
Sure.
right? And I classify communication into three ways. One is organizational communication, which is if you're doing a mandatory program, or right. How do you do that? The language that you use, and even it's driven down from the culture of the firm, right? So sometimes you need to give a stick, and you say if you don't do it on so and so time, what is the lever which in our case is attendance or money or whatever it is. You put in a fine, you have to do it, and then my team member has to follow up, and we get it done, right? But unfortunately, there's no other option that you have. You to figure out some lever, and then you hound people. In our cases, I hound people with emails every day. You set out, and then they come to me and say, "Bas karo," and I say, "You get it done. It'll stop automatically," and then they get to do, because a thing like a POSH or anti-money laundering, which you have to get done, right? So that's one type of communication what you use. Then I look at the others when I'm doing one-on-one communication, or I'm talking to people across the organization and what to do. I think there I knock off all the frills and just be authentic and be yourself. Whether I'm talking to someone who is older than me, or someone who I've just hired from campus, right? So you got the whole range of, you just knock off all the frills, be genuine, authentic, talk to them saying, look, this has not happened. And in more cases or not, you get a response and it kind of works. So that's the second type of conversations that we have. And the third, if I'm talking in my coaching conversations, I'm actually talking to a leader, giving feedback or how it is, then I do follow a slightly structured approach, but not an approach which is threatening, because that's not a lever in the organization here. So I think once you understand those levers, what work at a particular point and I can do it because at a 650 member team across, it's slightly easier to do. And that's how it works. Most of the time. You do get times where it doesn't, but that's the way I look at communication. I think the more authentic and honest you are, whether it's good news, bad news, whether you have a solution, don't have a solution, just be honest, authentic. It sort of works better than trying to make things sound really cool when they're not, or the other way around. So at least that's the way we work within the organization. Straightforward, authentic. This is it. I'm sorry it is affecting you or it won't affect you, but that's where it is. And that's the way I look at it. Again, caveat, 650 member team, not as close to 27,000 and a lakh plus. So I won't be able to relate to that, but that's my view on how I deal with communication, and especially for the new employees who I recruit straight from campus, right? I think the more honest you are with them and the more yourself you are with them, they're more happier, because they just want a place to express themselves. And if you can do that without having 50,000 boundaries around you, sort of works better. So that's my take. It's a very personal take on the whole idea of communicating with people.
Yeah, and then Kris, I must say, a very, very bold approach, I must say, right? So coming in and saying that, okay, this is what works for me and this is how I'm going to do it. But yeah, thank you so much, Kris.
I just wanted to come in on this one, because communication is such a broad topic. And, when I look at it from my lens in a regional capacity, I find that one element of communication for me is culture, because how we communicate with the Japanese firm is very different to how we would communicate with the Australian firm. The tonality of it, the casualness of the message, who's messaging, who's the sponsor, all of it kind of comes in, right? So that's one element. For us, translation becomes very important as well, because you want to make sure that you're having impact. So what is it that people typically want to learn and engage in and interact in? So AI and that translation element really kind of becomes super important. The other aspect that I'm finding is there is an element of reciprocity in communication. And what we are finding that we are working a lot with leaders is, how do we make it a two-way conversation, that you don't feel that you're only in a tell mode, but how do you really build listening into, what your teams are telling you. And also about work, reciprocity, because how do we look at work and assess work, our quantum of work, that needs a conversation as well. And I find that, building capability of reciprocity, both in leaders as well as in teams below, is quite a, focus, I would say, for a lot of organizations, including ourselves. So I just wanted to weigh in on the cultural element specifically because I find that quite interesting to navigate.
Sure. Sorry to just I think culture leads a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Across it. I think it's taken for granted at times, right?
Yeah.
Now, that's to a detriment of everything within an organization, right? So because people, at the end of the day, you can pay people well, you can get people to do a variety of things work-wise, so their minds are stimulated and they're not happy because they align with the culture of the organization and the culture of themselves, right? And that has to connect. Most cases, we encourage, you may dissent. If you have a different view, please bring it out and we'll have a conversation. So that's where, Anupama, you have that two-way conversation. In most cases, it works, especially with people coming out of the campus today. And the reason I focus on that is because going forward, these are the people who are going to be recruited. And 5-10 years later, they are your future leaders or ambassadors of where you are, right? So you have to allow that to win, allow people to dissent, and respectfully, of course. It's okay. Whether it's with the CEO, whether it's with your manager, or whether if you can have that, I think you're in a better place, but it has to be driven from the culture of the place. And does that culture align with the culture of the employee, right? Otherwise, no matter how much of money, no matter how much of mental stimuli, if I could call it that, will keep them happy, you're going to get them for 2-3 years and then it's done. And then you need to start the circle all over again. And that's when you start thinking it's us versus them, and you get into this, this negative space. So I just thought I'll chime in there.
Absolutely, Kris. Absolutely, Anupama. In fact, what I also felt through these discussions, listening to each one of you, is that I think culture is on the helm, right, of it. Like how you're able to build the culture that you would want, and like Shampa also mentioned in terms of how leaders are able to actually come in, bring that say sense of belongingness, etc. So all of this actually leads to culture, and that's really great. And I think today's organizations, at least most of them, the large ones, the ones are very, very focused in terms of culture. While technology, profitability, etc., is certainly the big ones, but then it's also in terms of are we in the right culture? Are we attracting the right talent? And that's the biggest thing, right? Like bringing in the right talent, and it's not just about the skill; it's also about the behaviors that one is in, right? So great points. Thank you so much. And I think this was really like a lot of perspectives coming in. And I'm sure that people in the session would have taken a lot out of this, right? Actually, what I had in mind, this actually takes me to the next question, right? Like while we are talking about, say we were talking about communication very specifically in the last 10-15 minutes. Sweata, this question is to you, Sweata. Like what do you feel like, what are the generational stereotypes and biases that continue to plague the multi-generational workforce? It could be in space of learning and development, OD or HR that you have always been across. But what do you think? What are the kind of stereotypes and biases actually that plague the whole system?
Thank you for the question. So in our organization, what we do is we try to bring in the entire inclusive culture, taking it from Kris, by addressing these stereotypes. And we do not bring in a segmented approach, which we've already agreed that we'll not label the different generations. So what we do is that we bring in the different generations and we bring them to a discussion where they go through different workshops. So I'll coin in the workshop that we have, and it is around the ethos of our organization. It is about the organization values to drive the culture of the organization. And when we do the learning journey, when we take the employees through the learning journey of these programs, we bring to them the idea of the iceberg theory, whereby we say what you see as the tip of the iceberg is just what is visible to you. What's happening is the other things that are below. And that's the larger chunk, which is biases, experiences, feelings, failures, anything that we talk of in terms of that. And then we bring the element of understanding among people is that what we see is just tip of the iceberg. And having said that, how do we interact with different generations? That's where we bring in the learning. And not getting into the stereotype, but then telling you about the values journey that we have, where we build in the learning culture of practicing how do you align your role with the values of the organization. While the role is about what you have to do, more aligned to the KPI, values are the set of 4 values that we have, are the practices which enable the values. And along with that, how do managers practice objective conversations, which means the communication that we were talking about? How do we align to a more aspirational conversations which managers and the different generations have in terms of their teams? And then how do we build in collaborative projects among different teams who practice in the values and bring it in their workspace in terms of newer initiatives, in terms of KPI. And then we kind of frame it together by the end of the year saying that, this is how it worked. It was not just the collaborative project. It was the culture, the shared culture that the teams practice, which brought in the success of the collaboration. So that is kind of the level 3, which we kind of bring in. And from there, we kind of bring in the best practices to people and kind of emphasize the idea that we are not working with different generations per se, but it's more about bringing in the values in perspective in the organization. And in that, of course, there are different generations and there are different labels to that, and the iceberg theory is relevant for that.
Sure. Thank you, Sweata. I think very, very thought-provoking. And so, say for example, so I had this question, and any of you all actually can come in. So when you look at learning very specifically, right, like while there is generational, like there's multiple people within the organization ranging from say a 25 years to maybe 0 years experience, right? Have you been able to identify what works for whom, their preferences in terms of learning? Say it could be the 25 years, the kind of person who has that work experience has a set thing saying that, hey, I would always want somebody to walk up to me, take me through, have that conversation. My learning happens that way, right? But then somebody who is just very early in career says that, hey, I don't want a lot of people communicating and things like that. But then for me, digital works, and that's the best way, right? And then you have always the middle people saying that, okay, we are okay with it. Hybrid works for us. What does that? How do you treat that? Maybe Anupama, you have a take here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I feel that every generation, and it's really generation agnostic, everyone wants a blended learning approach. I find that there is appetite for micro learning and self-paced learning. There is an appetite and an increasing appetite actually to come together in a social learning context where, people want to come together in smaller groups to discuss something, to really experience what each other is finding difficult or easy, because that that collective wisdom kind of teaches us something which is quite powerful as well. And then there is what we are calling learning in the flow of work, which is kind of taking away from the 70-20-10 principle, going a little more into that 70% to say it's not a manager or a leader's job to create learning on the job, but if I'm somebody who's struggling with a particular Excel formula, how do I make sure I have, instead of going to Google, now I will have ChatGPT or any other AI-based app that's going to give me that input very quickly. So I pick it up, I apply it, and I've already quickly plugged in the gap that I have. So I find that that blended learning element works very well, and there's appetite from everyone on it. But what I find quite interesting, and I was listening to this, thought leader by the name of Dr. Eliza Philby. She's written a book on what she calls inheritocracy. And in that, she talks about the fact that if we look at Gen X, they're actually the most apt, or they have the biggest appetite to learn AI-based courses because they are able to very quickly comprehend, bring in critical thinking to say where AI has a role and where AI doesn't have a role. But when it comes to, the generation which is consuming algorithms, which is our newer generation, they would actually maybe migrate a little more towards those softer aspects of what they need to pick up, because the technical aspects kind of come very quickly to them. They might have already had a lot of formal education in it as well. So they are looking at migrating to some of those human-centric skills a lot more. So it's quite fascinating on how that's kind of emerging, which you would think that it might be the other way around, but it's funnily enough, very different from what we thought was popular approach.
No, absolutely, Anupam. And I think I had always this. I think one of these discussions also that we have a lot with multiple organizations that we work with, the attention span, right?
Yeah.
So while I wouldn't know much, I would really want maybe one of you can take this up. Maybe Ajita, considering that you work with a lot of people across, say, branch banking, etc., and things. Do you feel attention span today, in the scheme of things, is one of the decision makers in terms of how you want to create a learning journey or a learning path or a learning module? Is that?
In fact, it is one of the initial, things that we do. And I think since last year, any program that we design, depending on who are we designing it for, we have now, derived, mathematical evidence of what is the attention span for this particular cohort, looking at their age segments. We've done enough exercises, FGDs, to derive that, okay, if this is the rule, this is the max attention span that we can get from them, depending on the frequency. Am I looking at a daily learning? Am I looking at a weekly, bi-weekly, fortnightly learning? Then what is the max duration that I can command this person to give to me? We absolutely go by thumb rules now, So we refer to a manual, we say, okay, we are not breaching this timeline, because overtraining people definitely does not work. In fact, it has a flip side to it. So, there is an apathy that actually we saw, breeding amongst people for longer durations of training program. And as I said, I've got, I can do a CUG at home, but forget the younger generation. Even, I a lot of times apply that to myself. I belong to a much, much older era, but thanks to Instagram, my own attention span has really gone down. Even when I'm watching a movie, I pause it and I go back to Insta, or I go back, I switch between stuff. So my own attention span is also quite, infected now. Sometimes when my husband is showing me a reel, he has to first tell me, give me the comfort. It's not more than 30 seconds, because I'll be like, oh, I don't want to watch it. Give it to me. I'll see it later. So he'll tell me just 30 seconds. So I realize how this attention span has affected everybody. So yes, our trainings really take care of that. And Anupama was talking about learning in the flow of work. We are big time into that. For every rule, as I said, we are creating these small learning bites. We call it knowledge transfer process, which is mobile-based, daily, bi-weekly. Nothing crosses beyond 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah. So I think thank you, Ajita, and you have dropped some truth bombs here. I think many of us here thought the same. Oh, you're talking about me, right? In terms of the attention spans, etc. At least I did so. But yeah, Shampa, I would like to hear from you. What are the kind of best practices that you follow when you look at this, right? When you're in the context of this, do you have different processes, etc.?
Yeah. I just want to add to Ajita that with so many, I completely agree with you. I would want to believe myself as, the older generation were very focused, etc. But, nobody can take away how the brain is made. So the cognitive load theory applies to all of us. When you have so much around to take in, and you will be able to remember only that much. So who's going to really fight and compete for that attention is going to be always there, right? So yes. So coming back.
How many slides are there? Somebody sends me a PowerPoint, I see, 30. Oh my God.
Yes.
Somebody sends me an email, if I see there are 3 paragraphs, I lose interest.
Yes.
Sounds
Yes.
end of this, So
Yeah.
I think everybody is in the same boat. We
True,
can't really say it is only younger ones.
Yes, and I think in a way it is not so bad because you just forced to make things more precise and sharp. And I think in a way that is good. You save some time. For what you save then time is a different question, but you can probably save some time, right? So coming back to your question, Anu, what we are doing, etc. So I think how we do it here and how I would like to do it, I would divide what sort of end result are you looking at? Okay, so one would be your knowledge dissemination, which is important. The basic vanilla you need to know, the functional requirements you need to know. So those you go through in the normal manner. But then again, you have different people being able to understand, get interested, and retain in different ways, right? There we bring in hyper personalization. We have different ways. There are different channels which are giving you that aspect, including, the digital learning, the LXP, nuggets that are being thrown, which is completely personalized. We have video-based learning. We are sending learning through WhatsApp, based on what is the requirement. We have these. We started something called a Friday Funda, which is one of the best practice. It's a 1 hour session. We pick up what is the most, I would say, important for aspect for the business, etc. We pick up a topic and we drive that. The subject matter experts come together. It's just a 1 hour session where we thrash out the whole thing. That how do we, for example, let's take issuance for that matter. If we need to get issuance, what are the things that are stopping? What do we need to do? And there, Anup, where we would struggle for attendance because it's a 1 hour, because it's directly impacting probably their earnings, we have tens of thousands people attending the session. So my average attendance there is 10,000. Okay, so again, that becomes impactful. So we are also, can we stand here and claim that we've really figured this out? No, we are trying things, keeping foundational learning philosophy constant. Okay, that there has to be some foundational learning that everyone has to go through. Okay, you may want to go through it in 5 days, somebody else can go through it in 1 day. That's all right, but you do need to go through it. And post that, if you have to just not spread the depth, the tea is important. So you have to deep dive, and to deep dive, you have various options given to you. But finally, we have to get, I think one of us were talking about how to get them to own up. I think Anupama was mentioning that it is not always somebody else's responsibility, not the leader's responsibility. So we are, currently wanting to drive that learning, growing your skills happens to be your own. That's your responsibility towards yourself. So that's the journey we're at right now. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shampa there. I think, like you right said, like, I think we are all going back to multiple discussions. Everything is like it's touching each bridge, right? The topics that we discussed today, it's also touching each of it, bridging the gaps, and then we try to find a final solution. But I think in today's world, I think it's changing so fast that I think we are trying to bring in an answer too quickly, right? While I would have loved to continue this discussion, and it was like I could just say that, hey, you guys just got me started. We have a lot of audience questions that actually is thrown at us, and I think it's only fair if I can just ask them to you all, so that you can actually answer them. So I think the first, Kris, this is to you. Very specifically in terms of how do you build inclusivity through learning, especially when you are dealing with audiences across geographies?
That's to me.
Yeah.
So my audience is not across international geography. It's mostly India, but so learning has transformed, right?
Yep.
From it used to be pen and paper, then classroom, etc. Today, unfortunately, it has moved to time because of the attention span, and Netflix and Insta have just taken away attention span. But the next thing is about intrigue, right? I think we miss that. Today, even if you scroll on a Netflix reel, or sorry, an Insta reel, in the first 3 seconds, if it intrigues you, you'll watch, or the first 2 seconds, right? And then you move on.
Yeah.
So you build that into a program. So the way we look at programs is, in any of my behavioral programs, the first thing is I mix the group, whether it's multi-generation, right?
Yeah.
No comment. The second thing is no PowerPoints, no Word documents, no Excel sheets. Get them away from the classroom, right? It's about chart paper, writing, going back old school sometimes, having discussions, feedback, and you do a lot of gaming within. So it takes care of everyone. Now, what that does is it changes the perception of learning.
Yeah.
And that's what's worked here. And then you go back and then you use time and space. So after 2 weeks, you do a group coaching where you get everyone back into smaller groups, and suddenly you have a multi-generation workforce learning from each other and talking to each other, understanding each other.
Sure.
And then you facilitate that. So that's one big aspect. The other aspect is, whenever we do a classroom session, within the first 5 minutes, you have that much of time to get the people there because they want to be there, or they're in their mind, it's a tick in the box, so I have to be there, tough luck. The way we do that is changes. You bring in an activity right in the beginning that takes them away from a normal icebreaker or something like that, right? So in one of the programs, we actually brought in an NGO and we created a treasure hunt across the organization, said we were doing something on ownership. So we said, whatever you do, you're going to make money for the NGO. And there were 3 NGOs who actually pitched to them. So they were on the other side listening to their pitches, and they decided which NGO they wanted to be. And they ran across the org. We did it was about an hour to get in clues. And the clues led to some money. And then, of course, we donated that to the NGO. And then we linked it to ownership. So by the time, in the first 10 minutes of them running, and it was an activity where they didn't even think about, rather than the traditional way where you would do an icebreaker, then you would get a context setting and say, what are your expectations? Blah. I think all that is gone. So it's about intrigue, very important, and then getting the money, and everyone is intrigued. Once you got them intrigued, whether you are 50, 40, 30, doesn't make a difference. You've got everyone hooked on, and then you get learning together.
Yeah.
Where they start talking. So that's my way of this. And if it comes to e-learning, it's time. No one has the time to go for 45 minutes, 1 hour sessions. Quick 5-10 minutes in your face, and that's it. That's the way you look at an e-learning. But the classroom sessions are the best way, going back to old school, getting people talking, interacting, sharing, and feedback, and usually it works. There are times where it doesn't, but you get a chance to experiment within.
Thank you. Kris, and I think a great way that you actually explained how you were trying to create that inclusive culture, right? Anupama, would it be fair if I ask you this, like, in case we want some bit of, say, enrichment in terms of how do you manage your audience, which is across geographies? Would you be able to pitch in something here? Yeah.
I think one of the things that's working very well for us is what we call the communities of practice. And we create them in a way where they're set up with the intent that we want to create a regional global identity for our learners. Because one of the things at KPMG that we're very committed to is it's very easy to feel membership to the particular country where you're based. But we want people to feel that they are global resources, that we are trying to create sustainability in talent, that you will have opportunities across the globe. And hence, to demonstrate that that culture exists, we need to make learning accessibility to be of a nature where you are interacting with colleagues sitting across the global network. So we find that these smaller communities of practice on specific topics, where we kind of pull in people from different geographies and locations, has become a nice way to not only do peer coaching, but it also makes them culturally more intelligent And we find that there is a certain amount of inclusivity, there's a certain amount of respect and anchoring back into our values that happens quite organically through this process. So that's something that is working very well. The other one that's working for us is mentoring. So we have a lot of interest by both senior leaders as well as what I call tone of the middle, where you have fairly seasoned managers who are wanting to commit time to say how can we help and share our experience and make that more democratically available to all. So the mentoring, reverse mentoring setup is also working very well. And like I said, I think all of the AI tools helps manage language barriers that sometimes come up as well. So it's actually quite an opportunity to try and flex and do different things, try different tools to make it all happen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anupama, for that. And I think when you're looking at very specifically on translations, I think I heard something a couple of days back that's come out. There was a new release in terms of AI. Like obviously AI was always there, but then a little more flexible and faster method of translations that's coming out, right? So that's great. Thank you so much, Anupama, for this really, really enriching thoughts. Before I think we are on time, but then I need to ask you all this question, and we'll do like a rapid fire, like just one question, one answer from each one of you. What is that one thing that the younger generation has taught your L&D team in the last 1 year? Right. Maybe Shampa, you want to go first?
One thing, I think many things, but I think precision and authenticity.
Great. Precision and authenticity. Kris, over to you.
It's all generations, right? It's simple. Don't teach me, intrigue me.
Okay.
That's what's my biggest learning over the last couple of years.
Ajita, to you.
I think keep it short and simple. I hate anything big and elaborate.
Great. Sweata, your thoughts?
Yes, I know. My thoughts are how do we enable them and empower them to be creative and not boomerang them with experience and ways to do things, but rather than that, let them come up with it and keep realistic deadlines, not make everything urgent.
Yeah.
They don't like it.
Yeah. And Anupama, what do you feel?
I think for me, it's different strokes for different folks. That's what I'm learning with all of them. So I'll say that.
Great. It was really, really lovely to have this conversation with all of you. I'm sure, other than all of us here, the six of us, I think the people who joined in also loved this. I have so many more questions in the chat, but then while we are on time and we would want to respect everyone's time here, we would keep that for the later time. But then thank you so much, Ajita, Sweata, Shampa, Anupama, and Kris. It was a lovely thing speaking to you all and having you all here with us.
Thank you, Anup, for hosting us and for the lovely questions.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Great to
Thank you.
Signing off. Have a very good day, everyone, and all the people who have joined us as well. Thank you so much, and stay tuned. We have something more coming up.